Charles Nyachae is a man with a lot of grey on his head and face. That message, you are looking at me like, yes, it applies to all of us.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Karibu sana, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Eric. Good to be here.
Karibu tena.
Asante sana.
He's the former chairman of the
Chairperson.
Chairperson.
Yes.
Not man.
No, the Constitution
Called it person.
called it person.
Okay.
Quite rightly, I think.
Chairperson of the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution. After Kibaki did this, akaweka katiba chini heavy. The next thing was to bring that katiba to life. And it needed pieces of legislation to be brought to life. And your commission was tasked with doing that. And then forwarding those to Parliament for processing and for passing an enactment. So many of the laws that we have as a result of the Constitution went through your hands.
Indeed.
And even the Constitution itself now, of course, because you are looking at what needs to be done, you understand it very well.
Reasonably well.
Reasonably very well.
No, I actually, on a serious note, I say reasonably because with the passage of time and every time that there's some new part of the Constitution to be interrogated, you realize that perhaps you didn't understand it as well as you may have thought.
The understanding is enriched with time.
Well, yes. I think when the Constitution is, when life is breathed into the Constitution, you then see things that you couldn't have seen before life was breathed into it.
Absolutely.
Before you action it, there are things you can't possibly see. You can be as imaginative as you wish, but your imagination will not stretch that far.
Yes.
True. City, welcome him with the day's proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for last week, this week, and next week are from the area of this particular continent referred to as the Maghreb. And we are looking at proverbs from the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. I don't know why it is they have to keep insisting they're democratic. But anyway, that's a story for another day. There is an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility.
There's an excess of familiarity at the root of all hostility. What's your interpretation of this one, Charles?
Actually, it makes a lot of sense because you're unlikely to get hostility unless you interact quite closely with either with people or with the situation. If you keep your distance, you're probably likely to avoid the hostility. I think that's what how I would understand it. Yes.
True.
Yep,
It makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense. Something is happening. I don't know whether it's out of familiarity that now we are seeing the hostility. There's an impeachment going on at the national level. There was an impeachment that was just starting to go on at the county level, Kericho.
Yes.
But county impeachments have just become part of our culture now. We see governor, deputy governor being impeached. Constantly. We are used to this. It's the first time that we're seeing an impeachment at the national level. And we've seen the drama that has come with it. A lot of drama. A lot of drama before the bill was published. Motion was taken to Parliament. A lot of drama at that point, even before Parliament started discussing it, public participation, this and the other. A lot of drama in the National Assembly. A lot of drama in the courts. A lot of drama in the public domain. There's a lot of drama. I had a conversation with someone yesterday and they said, this is our constitution at play. We had a conversation here with Professor Peter Kawanja yesterday and said, Kenya Sihami, this is a democracy that we fought for. This is it. What do you say?
Okay, at the very onset, what I think I would want to say, and I think that will probably apply to what I predict we will discuss throughout the 1 hour or whatever that I'm here. And that is that there is a part of the implementation of this constitution which we, the collective we as a country, to date, and we're now talking approaching 15 years since the promulgation of the constitution, and approach what the constitution is about. Yeah.
So we are at that
the drama to me is inevitable because like the ongoing impeachment at the national government level, it's the first time that we are having that. I mean, this is high profile.
Yeah.
That is inevitable. But when you go to the counties, one of the challenges again is because I am not sure that everybody who is in that process understands, what is expected of them, what the dynamics are, what the relationships between the various constitutional offices are, and that's why you end up with the drama. And even you look at the debate such as it was that went on in the National Assembly last week. You listened to the members exercising that constitutional responsibility. You're not entirely persuaded that they are all on the same page insofar as what the responsibility is. It's inevitable to a certain extent.
So the latest that's what's happening now is that the Senate has already started sitting. And just before that, we were seeing the High Court, the three-judge bench of the High Court, Eric Ogola, Frida Mugambi, and Anthony Mrima, declined to block the Senate from hearing the impeachment motion. That was the application by the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua.
Yeah.
The judges had said, come tomorrow morning and we will tell you. So they have said, we have considered everything that was presented to us and all the submissions made, and no, we will not stop the Senate from hearing this. The Deputy President has then asked the three judges whether he could appear before them on Friday. His lawyers argued that they should be allowed to file court papers manually if the judiciary's system fails to function. But he says, we'd like to come, even after that motion goes through the motions in the Senate, we'd like to come back here. So 27 applications before court, all of them seeking in one way or the other to just block the impeachment from taking place in Parliament. None of them went through. So Parliament, the National Assembly, has done its bit. The Senate is doing its bit. All right? Would you look back and say, all right, so this is what the Constitution actually provided for, that you shall have all these avenues and that there shall be independent decision-making that happens and the Constitution shall be brought to life?
Okay, let me say that, I haven't heard what the three-judge bench have said, but from the end result that you have just, as you have just stated, my expectation is that the argument is pretty much along the lines of the ruling of Justice Chachamuita yesterday. Which, with respect to the learned judge, I fully agreed with his argument. Because, one, he said quite correctly, in my view, that the court does have the jurisdiction. That was the first
issue.
Yeah. And yes, it has jurisdiction, in my view, because this process, there's been a lot of statements by learned analysts, even lawyers who say this is a political process, it is not a constitutional process, to the extent that they are saying political process in contradistinction to a constitutional process. I must disagree with that. Why? Because the very concept of impeachment comes from the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The process is laid out in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Now, I agree that there are political underpinnings in that process, but at the bottom is it's a constitutional process. And that constitutional process means that the courts, because it is to them that Wanjiku has delegated judicial authority to interpret and to enforce the Constitution, so they must have jurisdiction. Now, the second part of what I think both courts, yesterday and today, are saying is that, look, the Constitution has given certain responsibility to Parliament, the two houses. We must respect that. We must give them an opportunity to discharge that responsibility. But because we as court have the responsibility to interpret and enforce the Constitution, therefore we are watchdogs as far as the process of the Constitution is concerned. Let the process go on. If you still feel that
if there are issues that emerge,
yes, please come back.
Come back.
Yes.
If there are emerging issues,
if there are
in the process.
Yes.
Okay. Now there are those that then have said, as far as the Parliament is conducting it's going through its motions, it must also follow the dictates of the Constitution and the law. The dictates of the Constitution, it's expected to have, public participation. Very well done. It's expected that you're going to accord the Deputy President a right to response. It's expected that you're going to accord, if it goes to the Senate, both sides time to express their issues. And the expectation is that the Senate is going to consider only the grounds that are listed in the Constitution to make its decision.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is that reality?
Is that reality?
Yeah.
But
even from what we've seen in the other impeachments.
But the Senate has only just, it's probably just beginning now. So it's a bit difficult to answer that question, whether it's reality. Because remember, the Senate has a responsibility to decide on every one of those grounds.
Yes.
And unless they fail to do so, then at this stage, honestly, we cannot fault them.
This is based on the fact that the Senate is not new to impeachment.
Yes.
The National Assembly is.
Yes.
The Senate has handled impeachments before.
Yes.
It has handled impeachments of the governors and deputy governors, right? And from what we have seen before, have all decisions been made strictly in adherence to, we are looking at the charge versus the marking scheme here, which is the Constitution. Gross violation of the Constitution. Does this charge really amount to gross violation of the Constitution? And the debate in the Senate before they take a vote is focusing on the truth of the Constitution. Would you say that in all the impeachments that you've seen going through the Senate, they have really been looking at, the grounds as stipulated in the Constitution and nothing else?
You see, the what the Senate is going to do today and tomorrow, is basically a quasi-judicial process, But the big difference between that and what a judicial process that happens in the courts is that at the end of a judicial process in the courts, you get a reasoned ruling or a reasoned judgment. So you can look and say, on what basis did you decide this?
Exactly.
But the Constitution has given members of Parliament that delegated responsibility. Remember, if we focus on what is happening today and tomorrow, remember that they are dealing with a person or an office that was elected directly by the people.
Yeah.
So the Constitution then says, part of the delegated responsibility that the people are giving you, Parliament,
Yeah.
both houses, is you can remove this person by a process of impeachment. But the delegated authority is limited to, you can only do that, not because you don't like the color of his hair or because you don't like his height. You can only do that on these grounds. We are talking about violation of a provision of the Constitution or any law. We are talking about
Gross misconduct.
gross misconduct.
Yeah.
And we are talking about a reasonable apprehension or a reasonable basis to believe that the person has committed an offense of national law or international law.
Yeah.
So the Constitution is saying you must
Restrict yourselves to this.
to that. Now, here's the challenge. To make my point, let me give you an example. My member of parliament, who voted last week in the National Assembly, on my behalf and on behalf of all the
Constituents.
yeah. When my particular member of parliament did not participate in the discussion or in the contributions,
They didn't stand up to speak.
and he
before the
wasn't obliged to. He has two responsibilities. One is to listen, so that he hears what the mover of the motion is complaining about, and he also hears the subject of the motion, that is, in this case, the deputy president. Those are his responsibilities. He was not obliged to speak. Now, at the end of it, he was obliged, and he did vote. Now, me, who has given him that delegated authority, in all honesty, I cannot tell you what in particular caused him to vote the way he did. But I can't fault him, because he has done what the delegated authority that I have given to him, he has exercised it.
The threshold has been met.
According to him, the threshold has been... Basically, I gave him a blank check. The only limitation to that blank check are the guardrails that the Constitution puts, especially like in terms of procedure. But how am I ever going to know?
Whether he even interrogated and went.
Yeah, or how he decided that there is reasonable basis to believe that the deputy president has committed a crime or has violated a provision of the Constitution. You see? Now, that comes with the fact that and that's why I call it basically that the subject to those procedural guardrails where the court would then come in, but as far as the actual decision making is concerned of the content, we have given them that.
So he basically has the power and authority to vote
on my behalf.
On your behalf.
Yes.
But Chapter 10 expects him to come and ask you at some point.
Well,
Article 10. Is it Chapter 10 article?
No, it's not Chapter 10. the Constitution...
In many places...
The Constitution expects him and Parliament as an institution to... I think if I remember correctly, the wording in the Constitution is to facilitate public participation. But that's another area where we who have been involved in the implementation of the Constitution fell short because we don't have a law on public participation. The courts, when they've had the opportunity, they have they have pronounced themselves to a certain extent on public participation, but only to a certain extent, which is contextual in terms of the particular matter that they are dealing with. So one of the things that I hope will come out of all this process, irrespective of whether the deputy president is impeached or is not impeached, in fact, for me, as an old school lawyer of the common law tradition, I would be very happy if this matter went right through the courts up to the Supreme Court, so that we get some guidance from the Supreme Court on some of these very fundamental issues that touch on the process of impeachment. Like, what does public participation in this context mean?
Yeah.
Does my MP have to listen to the 30,000 or 50,000 registered voters in the constituency and decide on the basis of... Remembering that as a member of parliament, there is authority which we have already delegated to him.
Hearings in the Senate begin. The three-judge bench of the High Court has declined to halt proceedings on the impeachment of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, saying that process needs to go on in the Senate. The Deputy President has then applied to come and see them on Friday after that process is completed in the Senate. Well, we want to understand the various aspects of the Constitution, and that's why we have this Mzee here to explain them to us. For example, when does the president then appoint the next DP? We have those timelines. What does he need to do to consider the next DP? Now, what we had seen earlier is even from many commentators saying, advising the DP, before the Senate begins the process of the impeachment, resign. Because if you don't, whatever decision they make, if they vote to uphold the impeachment and you go home, then you'll never hold public office. Is that true?
That's my understanding of the Constitution, that if the DP is impeached, indeed, anybody who is impeached, remember that at the end of the process, if the Senate approves the grounds on which the impeachment is sought, that means he'll have been found guilty of violation of the Constitution, among other things.
Yeah.
Yes. My reading of the Constitution is that he then cannot hold public office after that.
Ever again?
That's my reading.
And by public office, what do we mean? Here is where we come with the distinctions between public officer and state officer. What does it mean?
Oh, state officers are just a higher...
Notified public officers.
A higher category of public officers, higher in the sense that the Constitution defines them and makes provision for statute to add to those who are state officers. And the particularly, when you're dealing with like Chapter 6 and so on, the expectations for them are higher.
So public office it cannot even serve as a DO.
That's my reading.
Cannot even be a clerk in an election, an IEBC clerk.
To the extent that is a public office, yes.
Hey.
When you defined the culture of constitutionality,
Yes.
My mind started thinking. And I started with just the understanding of the word culture, sum total of a people's way of life. So it looks like we have an anomaly here. this culture that you speak of is more of a non-culture than a culture in this sense. There needs to be a commonality of understanding. And if I look at, say, for instance, those who have studied the law and practice it like yourself, those who adjudicate like our judges, citizens like myself, what they understand the Constitution to be is not uniform. What they understand the Constitution to mean, whether the letter of it, the application of it, the spirit of it is not the same. So the culture of constitutionality, as you put it, is a good point of discussion, but only insofar as that it's a contradiction of terms when you look at how it is that it works.
You know, if you look at more advanced democracies,
yes,
I remember when I was a law student many years ago, one of the first things that we were taught when studying constitutional law is about the absence then of a written constitution in the United Kingdom. But there is a culture of constitutionalism without a written constitution, because everybody understands this is the way that we have agreed. Remember, a constitution is two things. It is a contract of sorts between the those who govern and those who are governed. And it is also a contract between you and I as
citizens.
Citizens. Now, that means that when we talk about a culture of constitutionalism, is that yes, we have a constitution, and yes, we have a provision. In our case, if you look at the first 3 articles of the Constitution, we bind ourselves to defend the Constitution. Now, what is it in our day-to-day life that makes us actually abide by that Constitution? It's that culture when it's there. But as I said earlier on, in the absence of civic education, and that should answer your question, then people don't even know what the fundamentals of the Constitution are. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very difficult for them to in themselves to inculcate a culture of something that they don't have a basic understanding of.
So arguably we're in the process of creating it. And when you have situations such as the one we have in the public domain, we see it being operationalized, and you get to understand that this culture, or rather this constitution and the tenets therein apply to every citizen.
Yes, but we are doing badly as far as that is concerned, because even if you listen and watch what transpired in the National Assembly, and I mean no disrespect, but everybody was all over the place.
They had their own charges.
Everybody had their own charges. It was difficult to say that this man, I don't like him in political terms, but I am obliged to look at and say, has he violated the Constitution? Do I have reasonable basis to believe that he has committed an offense? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Is he guilty of misconduct? Mm-hmm. Or is it just that I went to his office and he was rude to me?
And I didn't like the reception.
I didn't like the way I was received. So if that is a challenge at that level, what about
how do you? And that's why I started by asking you at the very beginning. You know that question. If you look at how MPs were discussing those charges, and they voted, right? The expectation that here is that this other house, let's not call it the upper house, this other house that's now been given the responsibility to try the person and bring the accuser and the accused and give them an opportunity to present themselves, the expectation here is that at least those ones, even if the others had not, even if the others had, gotten carried away by the politics of the day, that this House shall not be carried away by the politics of the day. That this House shall sit and look at the charges against what I call the marking scheme, the Constitution. These are the grounds. You have said ground number 1, gross violation of the Constitution and other relevant laws. And these are the charges that we put under that. Do they meet the threshold? That's the expectation of the Senate.
One would like to think so.
Okay.
But you see, we're never going to know for the simple reason that at the end of the day, they simply vote.
Exactly.
They could listen
and ask all
to
these
both
questions.
sides. No, they could listen to both sides. And a member rises and says, let them put the matter to a vote. Because there's no obligation for them to do anything other than listen
and vote.
Now, if we had a culture of constitutionalism across the board, then at least we would have a basis of being optimistic that even if they're not giving a reasoned decision at the end, they're simply voting, but we would have a basis of being optimistic that they're voting on the basis that, yes,
the threshold has been met.
This gentleman, I don't like his politics. He was once rude to me, but when I look at the what I am required to consider the marking scheme that you said,
Bado.
How
do we get there, Charles?
We must start with civic education. Without that, we are going nowhere.
This question, we've asked this question several times on this show. Does the Constitution of Kenya or any law place a responsibility on any institution to conduct civic education?
Yes. If you read the Constitution as a whole, and certainly if the Constitution as a whole, the responsibility there's a specific responsibility in the fourth schedule where the functions are divided. There is a specific responsibility on the county governments. Now, on the other side, there is a responsibility on the national government to support the county governments. So if you take the totality of the Constitution, it is my understanding that both levels of government
have a responsibility
as far as civic education is concerned.
But do they define what civic education entails?
No, it is not defined. But you see, if that was what we were dealing with, that would be a lesser problem. But as it is now, I am not aware of any civic education that...
You see, that's why I'm asking whether it's defined. Because you may actually hear both levels of government coming to argue that they've conducted civic education, that they've gone to create awareness to the people on matters of the Constitution and of the law. That when the Senate, for example, does its Senate machinani, that is part of its responsibility of conducting civic education. That when the county government goes and engages people in town halls, that is part of them conducting civic education. They could argue that.
They could. I think it would be a dishonest argument, but I agree with you that it would help if we had a law that set out what we mean when we talk about civic
some
education.
Parameters of it.
I agree. That I agree. That I agree. That's why I said at the onset, with each passing occasion when we have to deal with something that relates to the Constitution, we realize that we are a long way from implementing this constitution. It's still work in progress. Yeah, but at least if there was an effort that we could see, but now we were now saying, this is not good enough. But I am not aware of any deliberate effort to actually, have this civic education and get the citizenry to be civically educated so that they can exercise their rights under the Constitution and also the responsibilities that they have under the Constitution. And it may not be accidental.
How did the Brits do it? Because it wasn't written, and yet they have constitutionality. How did they get to arrive at this? Because there's a consensus, clearly, and there is an understanding and a commonality in all this. How did they arrive at it?
Good question.
To sub the water.
Okay, first of all, I think it took quite a period of time at different stages in their history. But I think it's kind of it's enmeshed with their culture as a people.
How they go about their business.
That I think has helped them in a great way. I mean, look at what has happened in the United States. You get people like the former vice president, Trump's vice president. As far as I can understand, the only reason he's not supporting Trump is because he could not fathom what Trump tried to do on January 5th. That whole thing of
the insurrection.
He couldn't.
He just, his mind just can't deal with it. Yeah, because as far as he's concerned, that is the beginning of the end. As far as the America as they know it, the democracy as they know it. Yeah, and
because if that can be entertained,
then
essentially,
Imenda.
I've got to ask you now these questions in terms of just getting to understand the process at where we are at.
Yeah.
So the Constitution talks about the removal of the president or deputy president by impeachment, and it says if at least 2/3 of the members of the Senate vote to uphold any impeachment charge, the deputy president shall cease to hold office.
Yes.
Shall, not may. Shall. This means automatic.
Yes.
As soon as the vote is made, and does it have to be gazetted?
Not readily sure, but reading that constitution, gazetting would I think come at a later stage when you're dealing with a fresh appointment. Reading that, it means that once the Senate pronounces it, the Speaker of the Senate, at the end of the process, assuming that the Deputy President is impeached, at the end of that process, the voting, the Speaker of the Senate will read from the Constitution that the Deputy President so-and-so forthwith ceases to hold office.
149. Within 14 days after a vacancy in the office of the Deputy President arises, the President shall nominate a person to fill the vacancy, and the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it. Right?
Yes.
So 14 days to nominate, 60 days within which to vet. Now here comes
not vet.
Not to vet, to
just approve.
Vote.
Just
approve.
Agree.
It's just vote.
Yeah.
They don't even need to invite him to ask him, to interrogate him.
No.
Not like cabinet secretaries.
No.
So the nominee does not have to sit before a committee there to be asked questions, what is your worth, and all those questions.
No.
Okay.
Because they are not vetting.
They are just voting.
Yes.
And what's the basis of the vote?
Remember, Charles, remember, I go back to what I said at the beginning. This person, the Deputy President now, because that's what we're discussing, was together with the President, the people of Kenya exercising their sovereignty directly
Elected them.
Elected them, both of them. Now,
There's a
the
vacancy.
members of parliament have been given the responsibility to make a decision subject to the constitutional guardrails that I talked about, whether he should be removed by impeachment. Once that is done, now, again, the president is given a responsibility to nominate in place of the people electing directly. And Parliament, as the people's representatives, are required
Just say yes.
to say yes.
And there's no threshold.
What if they say no?
You know, like many things
So
in this,
it goes back to the president to nominate someone else.
honestly, like many of these things in this whole process, that's why I said that.
We are living the times.
Yes,
because
and that's why I said that as an old school lawyer who believes that the law is what the court say it is. That's why I would want this matter to end up
in court.
At the Supreme Court, so
Because-
that it's determined.
Save for this Article 149(1), which says within 14 days the president nominates, and within 60 days the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination after receiving it.
Yes.
It doesn't tell us if they vote yes or if they vote no, what happens.
It doesn't tell us.
It doesn't even tell us the threshold. Do they need to be 2/3 or a third or just a simple majority? It doesn't tell us.
My reading, in the absence of requirement of any other threshold,
Yeah.
my reading would be a simple majority.
Just quorum. Simple majority of quorum.
Yes, that would be my reading.
You know, you get the impression that the drafters of this constitution did not foresee such a situation. So the lack of preparedness is clear, because if you are going to vote, unless you assume that the vote can only be to simply agree with what the president's decision, which I don't think is the case. So if they are voting, simple question. In the negative, what then do you do? We do not know what to do. Again, so this matter will end up in court.
Which is not a bad thing, Charles.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful thing. Oh, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Final question.
Yes, please.
About a minute.
Yes.
Does the president need to check whether this person qualifies to be somebody who is elected as deputy president in all those issues? When the president and the deputy president candidates are presenting themselves, they go to the IEBC and they present their papers and credentials. And the IEBC then confirms that, yes, you qualify. So now the president qualified, passed by the IEBC. The new nominee, do we need IEBC to actually check whether this person qualifies?
I have to say that this is a contentious issue amongst the lawyers and constitutional scholars. My own view is that when I read the Constitution in its entirety, the role of IEBC, the way that the Constitution has shared out responsibilities, and bearing in mind what we have just discussed, that really what is being done here is an exercise of delegated authority. My own, and there will be lawyers who will violently disagree with me. My own view is that on the technical part of is Eric Latiff qualified to be deputy president, you require the commission.
The commission,
Not
secretariat.
No, that's my view.
Okay.
And I think there are many lawyers who agree with me on that, and there are many who disagree. Again, the Supreme Court, and that's the beauty of all this, and that's why I think this whole process is good for our Constitution, because that's why we have a Supreme Court, the same way that the members of Parliament are exercising the authority that is delegated to them by the people is the same way that the courts, and in particular the Supreme Court, in my view, should be given the opportunity to exercise the judicial authority of interpreting the Constitution that is delegated to them. But tomorrow you can call another lawyer here and they'll tell you the exact opposite. Why? Because it's not been, the Constitution does not say in black and white what should happen, and the courts are yet to make a determination.
The interpreter has not interpreted.
Yes.
Charles, thank you very much for joining
Asante
us
sana.
today. Charles Nyachae is the former chairman of the Commission for the Chairperson, the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.